Hello, everybody. This is going to be day one of our um, independent reading project. That's what it is, independent reading project. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a book review. Okay. I'm going to really try and buzz through some of my favorite all-time books for you in a couple of minutes here. And if you decide that you want to read any of these books, you are more than welcome to for your independent reading project. Okay. So let's jump right in. First three books, these are all young adult books, high interest levels for kids. This first one here, Monster by Walter D. Myers, is a really interesting book. This young man is on trial for murder. He's 16 years old. Kind of a wrong place, wrong time story. It's written as a book, a screenplay, and a diary all in one, where the main character is kind of writing the movie for his life and what's going on. Really interesting book because you really don't know until the end as to the guilt or innocence of the main character. But a lot of it is about the trial. This second book here, The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, really fun book. This is about, new kid in school type of story, trying to make his own way there, becoming a little popular. And there's some funny and scary things that happen, but overall, this is kind of a upbeat, kind of funny book to read. It's very sarcastic. It'll make you laugh a lot. And if you're interested in like that new kid in school type of story, it's a good book. This one of my favorites, Stoner and Spaz. So this story is about a young teenager, high school kid with a physical handicap. He has a physical disability, which makes him limp, and he kind of looks weird. He gets picked on a little bit at school, but at some point he meets a nice young lady who is a avid pot smoker, and he starts smoking pot, and they become friends, and they kind of fall in love. So it's a nice little like love story, teenage romance type of book if you're into that. Okay, moving on. These are some of these books are a little darker. This book, Speak. This is a classic, really good book. It starts off with a girl in ninth grade who is not speaking to anybody. All you hear about is her thoughts throughout the day. She literally can't talk to anybody because of something that happened at a party over the summer. You find out what that something is as the book goes on. Really good story, really powerful. This next one, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, is a fun book. I believe it takes place in the 80s. It's about a young man who's dealing with some mental and emotional issues. Some serious themes in here: drug use, teenage romance, all kinds of things, trying to fit in. Really interesting book, really powerful. You've probably heard of this book, seen the movie, or read it yourself, Holes. This book is so much fun. It's about a young man. I cannot say his name. His name is Stanley. I forget his last name. Stanley gets arrested for supposedly stealing something. He gets sent to a work camp where they are digging these holes all throughout the desert. And as the book goes on, you find out why. And it is a really fun and interesting story. Next, this is kind of like the adventure slide, where if you're into adventure books, sci-fi, dystopian worlds, then these books might be right up your alley. So I love The Hobbit. The nice thing about The Hobbit is this book was really written for children. Okay, The Hobbit is technically a children's book, even though it's 300 pages. So it's a long book, but it's really fun. It's a lot of adventure. There's action the whole time. It's really cool. And it's an easy read. So if you're into that and you like the Lord of the Rings stuff, The Hobbit is a lot of fun. Some of you have probably read The Lightning Thief, or at least you know about it, Percy Jackson. He's a very cool character. There's a lot of connections to Greek mythology here. Percy Jackson also has dyslexia, and you see how that affects him as a character, both positively and negatively, throughout the book. So that's really cool to see that, because some of the things that are going on with Percy's dyslexia are actually true for people in real life. Next in the action adventure series would be The Hunger Games. You've probably seen the movies. If you have, the movies are pretty good. I've read the books. The books are much better. I promise you that. Give them a chance. This is that dystopian society, revolution, starting from scratch. A lot of killing, a lot of murder. Just overall really fun stuff. A lot of violence. Okay, so if you're into violence and stuff like that, The Hunger Games is definitely a cool book. Okay, next we have these are some of the all-time classics. Okay, these are three of my favorite books that I have never forgotten as old as I am. And two of them I read in sixth grade. This first one, Where the Red Fern Grows. It's a great book. It's about dogs, a young kid and his two dogs that he gets. A really fun story to read. If you're a dog lover, it might be tough for you. That's the only hint I'm going to give you, so be wary of that. But I love this book. It's a great book. Next is Hatchet. Hatchet is a classic Gary Paulson, classic novel. Basically, this young man here gets, he's in a plane crash, I think in the Canadian wilderness, and at first all he has is a hatchet, and he has to survive in the Canadian wilderness. Really fun survival book. Lots of things happen. Nonstop action. Definitely a great read. I've never forgotten this book, and I read it, let's see, in sixth grade. I was 12 years old, so that was 1995. Okay, so this book, I read this book almost 25 years ago and still remember it vividly. It's a great book. And the last one in that category would be The Outsiders. This book I always recommend to people who are not huge, they don't love reading, they want an interesting story. The Outsiders is really a good book. Teenage angst, gang stuff, romance, fighting, death, all of that happens in The Outsiders. That's why it's a classic. Really fun book. Takes place in Oklahoma in the 1960s, maybe. Great book. If you're into that, it's short. It's a quick read. It's only like 100 some odd pages, and it goes very fast, and it is not complicated at all. Very simple. Okay, so that's the books that I would suggest. Those are like my 12 books. There's more, but these 12 are really fun. They're really good books. They're really easy to read. And you won't hate reading these books. I promise you that. Like, none of them are bad. They're all captivating books. So here's your only rules for choosing a book for this project, okay? Number one, your book must be a work of fiction. You cannot read a biography. You cannot read anything that is not fiction, okay? It has to be fiction. It has to be a fake story, okay? It could be historical fiction, which means that it takes place during a certain historical time period, but the characters and everything else, for the most part, are fiction, okay? Number two, your book must be a book you have never read before. I don't want you rereading anything. It's got to be a new read for you. Your book must be for ages 12 and up, so that means no children's books. Okay, this book, all these books here that I listed for you are for ages 12 and up or older. Okay, but 12 is the minimum. Your book must be at least 100 pages. Okay, the reason I say that is because most of you will go in and just try and find the shortest book you can. You won't find a 100-page book that is not age appropriate. Okay, so 12 and up usually has the number of pages you need. It also has content that will be more interesting to you. Okay. And graphic novels are okay as long as it meets the above criteria. So as long as the graphic novels meet criteria 1, 2, 3, and 4, you may certainly read a graphic novel. I have no problem with that. Okay. If you have any questions, obviously you can post a message to me on Google Classroom. The only other thing I'm going to require you to do is you can research the book. You do not need to go to the library to choose a book, to research a book. So you're going to do that in class. You are going to find a book that meets the criteria, and you're going to post that book into Google Classroom, the one that you're reading, okay, so that I could verify it and make sure that it's okay. Once you've found the book that you want to read, you may go take it out from the library in school if they have it. You can also go to the Elwood Public Library. It's a great library. They have a ton of books. You could also go to the Green Lawn Public Library. It does not matter to me. Some of the books I have here, like Speak, I have in the classroom. The Outsiders I don't have a copy of, but Speak, Where the Red Fern Grows, and The Hobbit, I all have copies of that in the classroom on my bookshelf. So you are free to go and borrow that book. Just let me know that you did that, and I have no issue with that. Okay, again, if you have any questions, feel free to post to this classroom. Have a good one and good luck. Make sure you pick up your book as possible.